What is that determines whether we'll have shock or not. Okay, and how the flow field is very different if you talk about a subsonic flow or supersonic flow. Then we looked at various configurations, and in fact, actually, some people pointed out that because of orientation, but still we discussed that we have shock for different figures. So we have for spherical, or it is a, you can imagine a cylinder or a sphere here, or we can have a step. So for any configuration or any shape, we are able to see shock waves. Okay, I have added one more example. So as you can see in when you have aeroplanes for supersonic speeds, so they have delta wings. So this is how delta wings look like. Okay, so even if you see, we change this angle of attack. Basically, this is your orientation. So whatever orientation you have, that may change your flow field a bit. Okay, how flow is approaching or attacking, how basically you can change lift by changing this angle. Okay, that some parameters will definitely change depending on orientation, but what remains constant is that whenever you have supersonic flow, and then you will get shock irrespective of whatever orientation you have. So that is one fundamental basic core and guiding principles for this subject. So you will see different basically oblique shocks. Most of the examples that we have considered, oblique shock is observed. We'll also talk about expansion fans as we move along, maybe in the next or next to next class. So this is some general overview. Then we talked about some flow features and how do we define a shock. So this is basically a compression front, okay, and it is found in supersonic flow. And across the shock, we see a very abrupt, a very steep change in fluid properties that we are going to explore today. So we look at equations, how these properties vary, and what sort of changes to expect when you move across a shock. Okay, so we talked about these are the general examples that we discussed. Okay, again I said that normal or oblique shocks. Normal means you are normal or 90 degree to the flow field. Oblique means you are not normal. You are at some angle to the flow field. So this is the basic difference. As we move along, once we this is the more general configuration. We'll start deriving numericals, equations for this normal shock, and then once we have developed some understanding of normal shock, then we'll also modify these equations and we'll see how to deal with oblique shock. So basically, what we'll do is we'll take two components of velocity. So that we'll discuss later on. And okay, so this was a slide where we started in the last stopped in the last class. So what happens is that inside the shock, okay, it is a very complicated lot of things are going on, which we it is one thing is beyond the scope of the subject. Second thing is that we are not much interested what happens inside. Okay, we are interested in what are the fluid properties upstream of that region and downstream. So if I know these two and I know how these properties vary, this is good enough for me. I am not very keen to investigate or probe inside the shock. And anyways, for all practical applications, this thickness is very small. Okay, it is of the order of microns. So anyway, that is not having much practical. It will not give me any lot of advantage to know what is going inside. So what we'll do is we'll just approximate this as a step jump. We'll say that properties jump from here to next this condition, and then we'll assume a flow field assuming 1 and 2 are sufficiently far. Okay, so we'll just draw a line. We'll say that this is the shock, and we assume that this is sufficiently far away from this equilibrium conditions are far away from the shock. Anyway, when it is very thin, so you can come close also, but relatively it is still far compared to the thickness of the shock. These two are quite far from the shock region or non-equilibrium region. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us now start to develop our set of equations. So again, we'll have a lot of equations. That's why I wanted to give you some examples or some images so that you don't feel bored. Now let us look at the equations. So mass will anyways be conserved. Whatever disturbance or whatever process you have here, what mass is what mass is coming at the inlet, the same mass will be at the exit of the pipe. So conservation of mass, rho 1 V1 is equal to rho 2 V2. That will always hold good. Now we'll also talk about conserving momentum. So P1 plus rho 1 V square, this will also hold good for this scenario. Then conservation of energy. So we'll talk about enthalpy plus kinetic energy is constant for across the flame, shock front. Then we'll talk about equation of state. So we can relate P as rho RT. And we'll moving forward, we'll also look at we'll consider it to be a perfect gas, and then based on that assumption, we'll make some simplifications in our derivation. And enthalpy we can define as CPT because it is a perfect gas, so we'll consider CP to remain constant and dependent on temperature only. So what do we see here? We have 5 equations. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have 5 unknowns. So let's say that I know what is coming at the inlet. Inlet, I know these properties, rho 1, V1 and all that. What is unknown is, I don't know what is the pressure behind the shock. I don't know pressure, density, temperature, velocity and enthalpy. So these are what we say that these are unknown and this is what is known. So then our task is to derive equations or on how properties vary. So using these properties, we'll try to find out how much this has varied or what is property at state 2. Okay. Now this is your momentum equation what we have in the last slide, and this is continuity, mass conservation. So if I divide this by this, what I will get? I will have P1 by rho 1 V1. Rho 1 will get cancelled. So V1, let me write it down. So P1 by rho 1 V1 plus this rho 1 V1 get cancelled. So V1 is remaining. Similarly, we have P2 by rho 2 V2, and this divided by this will give you V2. So this is one equation coming from momentum conservation and mass conservation. Now I can further do some rearrangement and write. We can take this to the LHS, so it becomes P1 minus P2, and V1 will go that side and become negative. So V2 minus V1. Now we know that speed of sound can be written as gamma p by rho, root of gamma p by rho, or I can write p by rho. Okay, just take a square and p by rho is equal to a square by gamma. Right? Now if I substitute this here, we have p by rho in two terms. P by rho, P1 by rho 1, P2 by rho 2. So for both these terms, I will replace p by rho using a square by gamma. So I will have a square by V1 gamma V1 square minus A2 square by gamma V2 square. Just I am replacing this term, and delta V is anyways there. Now we have HP, H is equal to CPT, and for a perfect gas we have Cp is gamma R by gamma minus 1. This all we have discussed previously for when we talked about asymptotic flow. So if I combine these two equations, I can say that H can be written as gamma RT by gamma minus 1. Okay, so gamma R multiplied T, that's it. Or I can say this quantity is basically your A square, right? Root of this is A, so A square by gamma minus 1. Okay, so this is these two relations we have derived in this slide. We have some relation for A square, and for H, I can write H in this form. Now, the animation is not working properly. Anyway, so this is H which we have derived in the last slide. Now we have this relation. So anyone can tell me what is conserved here? we discussed in the 2 slides ago. Conservation of what?
Energy.
Energy.
Energy, correct. So we are talking about enthalpy and kinetic energy. So if I combine these two, basically I will just replace H by A square by gamma minus 1. So this is what we'll get. Okay, so V1 square by 2 plus this much, and which is equal to same thing for stage 2. So point 2 also will write V2 square by 2 plus A2 square by gamma minus 1. And this will be equal to, if we relate this to critical quantity. So we talked about how we defined A star. So if you look at that particular definition, we can write A star in this form. Okay. Now we have two equations here. One is that V1 square plus A1 square. This quantity is equal to this, is related to gamma. Let me make a, so this quantity is equal to this, and similarly this quantity is equal to this. So if I do both equate both of them, then I can write separately for A1 square and A2 square. Okay, so A1 square, just doing some rearrangement. So basically I will subtract V1 square, okay, and then I will divide by gamma minus 1. So I'll take this two RHS and minus V1 square divided by gamma minus 1. So this is what we have for A1 square and A2 square, just by doing rearrangement in this equation. We have two equations, rearranged and find values for A1 and A2 square, and this is what we'll get. Okay, now what we can do is, I will substitute A1 square using this. Okay, so if you do that, this is what you are going to get. So basically we are starting with this relation and we are substituting one by one. So first we replace H by this, then A square, A1 basically I am replacing with A star. Okay, so this is what we get. This is only simple rearrangement, no complicated maths here. So again, if we do rearrangement, basically what we want to express it in terms of delta V, or this is what we are doing. So if we take common V2 minus V1, this is how it will come out. Okay, now in this equation, if you again divide by V2 minus V1, we'll get. Okay, so if you divide, see, we have, by using this equation, if you rearrange, we'll get this. Now what we have done is we have got V1 as common. If I remove the common part, this will be 1, and this will be, this term is written here with A star square, and then this term is written here. This will be equal to, if you, we are just cancelling this term, so it will not be 0, it will be 1. So here we get 1 for V2 plus V1. Is this clear? What we are doing here? Clear or not clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we have one equation in this form. So if you again do some rearrangement, or basically we can say that take this common and move it to RHS. So with some simple rearrangement, we'll get, basically we are trying to derive a relation for A star. Okay, so take this term to RHS and then you multiply and divide. Finally we'll get this form. Now again we can cancel this gamma plus 1 and we'll end up with A star square is equal to V1 into V2. Okay, so this is a very important relation. This is known as Prandtl equation. So Prandtl equation says that A star is the critical speed of sound. Basically we talk about throat area. So this is a constant area duct. So in that area, whatever is the critical speed of sound, that will be equal to, square of that will be equal to V1 into V2. Okay, what is the incoming velocity before the shock and after the shock? Multiply that will give you A star square. So using this, again, this is the Prandtl equation what we have in the last slide. So if you use that, you also know that m star is equal to velocity divided by a star. Similarly, I can write m2 instead of a star square. I can write m1. I can write just let me get it. Okay. So here what I can write is a star square is there and m star is v by a. Okay, so what I can do is I can write a star by, let us say, right, take v2 that side. It will be v2 is equal to v1 is there and you divide it by a star. So v1 by a star. Okay, so what is this quantity? Can anyone tell me? Looking at this,
Jack number.
this is m1 or m2?
M2. M2.
It will be 1 by m2, 1 by m2 star, right? And this will be m1 star, right? So this is this relation is just the reverse of that. So if you do take this to LHS, it will become 1 by m1, and this will go up, so it will become m2 star. Fine. So finally, we have a relation between Mach numbers of, see, this is the duct. This is how you have a shock. So we are for this chapter, basically we are talking about two states. One is before the shock, one is after the shock. Okay, we are assuming that the flow goes from left to right. So we are deriving relation between m1 and m2. Okay, basically in star terms of star. So this is what we have. M2 star is basically inversely proportional, or it is not proportional, it is equal to, it is inverse of 1 by m1 star. So this is also an important relation. We'll discuss in a few slides. We'll discuss what are its consequences or what comments we can make on the how shock behaves. So also what I can say here is, if m1 is more than 1, if m1 is more than 1, then m2 will be less than 1. So hence, if you are saying that normal shock is getting formed in a supersonic flow where m1 is more than 1, then behind that m2 will always be subsonic. It will always be less than 1. That is one of the basic fundamental concepts in shock. Okay, and this is not limited to calorically perfect gas, but in general, whatever type of gas you have, this will definitely be there. That before the shock, m1 is supersonic and then it becomes subsonic. So this is one characteristic features of a normal shock. Okay, now m star we have derived previously in isentropic flow. This can be related to m like this. So I can write, now you take this equation and try to write m in form of star. Okay, so you do that, and we also know that m2 star is equal to 1 by m1 square, m1 star square. So using this relation and this relation, we can find the relation between m2 and m1. So this is what it will look like. Okay, here would we see that m2 is only a function of m1. So if you look this equation carefully, see what is there. Only gamma is there and m1 is there, right? So if you assume that gamma is constant for a particular gas, let us say for air we have gamma is equal to 1.4. If you assume that this gamma remains constant, then I can safely say that m2 is only a function of m1. It does not depends on anything else. M2 does not it does not bother what is your pressure, what is your temperature, or all that. Only basically your temperature will affect your m1. But the point what I'm trying to make here is that once you know m1, then you need not worry about any other property. If you know M1, you can find M2. M2 will depend only on M1. Okay, and when M1 is equal to 1, if you substitute it here, tell me what will be the M2. Can anyone calculate and tell? If M1 is equal to 1, what will be M2? So let me write it for you. Will M2 will be 1? Okay, let me compute. So M1 is 1, so M1 square, it is be 1 only. So let us cut it off. So I'll have 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2. So if I take this up, so I'll have 1 plus gamma, 2 plus gamma minus 2. So I'll have gamma plus 1 by 2. Is it fine? Yes or no? People are here, not there.
Yes, sir. M2.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this will be 2 gamma minus gamma plus 1. Okay, this is within bracket, this is minus 1. So if you open it, it will become minus gamma plus 1 divided by 2. So 2 will get cancelled. You will have gamma plus 1. Okay, and what will be? 2 gamma minus 1 is gamma plus 1. So will it be 1? So what we see, for M1 is equal to 1, we are getting M2 square is 1, it means M2 is also 1. So this is also 1. So one scenario is that M1 it is supersonic flow, shock is getting formed. Another scenario, another possibility is that this is M1 is sonic 1 and M2 also remains sonic. Okay, so here it is 1, Mach number is 1, here also Mach number is 1. So that, if you have a scenario like that, that is called Mach wave. So one example is sound wave. Sound is traveling at speed of sound. Sound is traveling at sonic speed. So that is what we call Mach wave, where both M1 and M2 are equal to 1. Okay, so we'll again look into more detail what exactly we mean by that and what are the equations. But for now, two scenarios we are considering: supersonic flow coming here, that will form subsonic flow in this side, and sonic flow that will have sonic flow on both the sides of shock. These are the two possibilities. There is one more possibility that we are going to discuss in a few slides when you talk about entropy and all that. Okay, moving on. So another let me remove this. So another interesting thing to observe is that if, let us say, M1 approaches to infinity, then what will happen? If you look at this equation, okay, so let's say that M1 approaches to infinity, so this will be infinity, this will be infinity. So other terms are anyway negligible, I will not consider this. So what will happen? This will get cancelled. I will be having gamma minus 1 by 2 divided by gamma. So gamma minus 1 divided by 2 gamma and take a square root of that. That is what we have. Okay, so if M1 is, if you have really high speed which is approaching infinity, then M2 will be this. Okay, this is in the extreme limit based on this equation. Moving on. So V1 by V2, that is what we are interested in. So let us say multiply and divide by V1. So V1 square by V1 V2. This becomes A star square, and this becomes finally M1 star square. Now M star square is equal to this. How M star is related to M, that we have already seen. If now I combine these two relations, what I will get is, I will get basically first what I will do is I will write V1 by V2 is equal to M1 star square, and then instead of writing M1 star, I will use this relation. Okay, so here it is only M. If I write it in terms of M1 star, so this will be M1 and this will be M1. So this is what we have here. Okay. Now by continuity, I have rho 1 V1 is equal to rho 2 V2. So if I equate ratio of densities, so that can be equated to V1 by V2, and then that will also be equal to this term. Now, what is this equation for? Conservation of
Momentum.
So conservation of momentum, I can say P plus rho V square is constant, or I can say take the difference, delta P is equal to difference in rho V square. Now from continuity I have, this is coming from continuity, right? Rho 1 V is equal to rho 2 V2. So if I substitute it here, I can write delta P is equal to, now in the RHS, if you take rho 1 V1 as common, so I'll have V1 minus rho 2 V2 is equal to rho 1 V1. So I'll take that common and we'll keep it out. I'll have delta V here. Okay. Now from this relation, I can say delta P is equal to rho 1 V1. Take V1 again common, so it will become V1 square 1 minus V2 by V1. Okay, this equation just I'm taking V1 common, that's it, and we'll end up with this. Now this equation, if you divide by P1 here, LHS and RHS divide by P1, so we'll have delta P by P1 is equal to this term divided by P1. Okay, so this is what we have. Based on, we have used momentum equation and these relations for velocity, Mach number and momentum. So now we'll try to see what we can get from this relation. So this is what we have in the last slide. Let me get a pointer. Okay. Or I can also say that this term, instead of writing this, I can also write M1 square. Okay. Because why I can write that? Because P by rho is equal to A square by gamma, that we have already seen, and Mach number is V by velocity by speed of sound. So if you substitute all that, you will get, instead of rho V square by P1, I can write gamma M1 square. Okay, rest of the terms remain the same. There is no change. Now V1 by V2 is this much that we have seen in the last slide. If we substitute that in this relation, okay, we have V2 by V1, right? So then this will go as reverse, 1 by that. So if you do that, this is what we are going to get for delta P by P1. Okay, this is fine. Now, what if I do some rearrangement? If I take basically, this is, I will take waveform of fraction, so it will be -1, and gamma M1 square I can write, basically this 1 minus this will go up, and I'm expanding the numerator. Okay, so this basically it will be 1 will become this term gamma plus 1 M1 square, gamma plus 1 M1 square minus 2 into this term. Okay, that's what I'm just expanding this, that's all. So from this, I can say, now take this -1 into RHS. So this delta P, pressure ratio will become 1 plus. Then inside this, if you do some rearrangement, basically we can cancel some few terms. So for example, here we have M1 square, here we have -2 minus M1 square minus gamma M1 square. So that will get cancelled, and some terms will be cancelled, some will be rearranged. So if you do that, you can write 2 gamma by gamma plus 1 m1 square minus 1. So this is how we can get pressure ratio for a flow across the shock. So P1 is before the shock, P2 is after the shock. Okay, and this also depends only on M1. Now this pressure ratio is basically this one. This is basically called shock strength. Delta P by P1 is called shock strength. So when we moving forward, we will talk about strong and weak shocks. So for strong, basically as obvious from the name, if you have large delta P, then it will be a strong shock. If this delta P is very small, then it is called weak shock. So we'll look at both these scenarios moving forward. Okay, now let us start with this equation of state. Now from that, can I write temperature ratio in this form? So P is equal to rho RT will be holding good for state 1 and state 2. So if we use both that, R will be always constant. So temperature ratio will be a ratio of pressure and density. Okay. Now this is what we have from the last slide, pressure ratio. And this is what we have from the velocity ratio, last to last slide. Okay. So what you see what we are doing here, we need to find temperature ratio. We express that in terms of pressure and density ratios. And from previous results, we know what is the equation for pressure ratio and density ratio. So if I combine these two, I will get temperature ratio. Okay. So just make one important observation here, that this is rho 1 by rho 2 and this term is for rho 2 by rho 1. So we have to do a reverse. We have to take the inverse of this and we have to multiply. P2 by P1 will be the same, multiply by inverse of this. Okay. So this is what will give you. So this is your first term P2 by P1, which you see here. Now this is the inverse. So gamma minus 1 m1 square plus 2 will go here on the numerator and this will be the denominator. So we are just multiplying these two terms and we get temperature ratio. Now temperature ratio we can also write H2 by H1 because Cp, I am assuming that Cp remains constant. So H is equal to Cpt. If Cp remains constant, I can write temperature ratio as enthalpy ratio. Now that can also be written as A1 and A2 square. If you recall how we described about stagnation enthalpy. So A1 plays a part and then that will be in terms of this. Okay, now let us talk about entropy. So delta S, this is what we written, we have already discussed when we talked about one-dimensional flow. So here, what do we need? We need to find entropy, delta S, we need temperature ratio and pressure ratio, right? So this is what we have already obtained in the previous slides. We know the relation for temperature ratio, we know the relation for pressure ratio. Okay, so if we substitute here, we'll have a relation for delta S. So you see this, if you compare carefully, you can see that these are the same terms. T1 by T2. This is what exactly is shown in bracket here. So this is T1 by T2 and this is T2 by P1. Same term is shown here. Okay, that's all. Just you have to substitute here for finding delta S. Okay, so in the last few slides, these are the relations that we are deriving. So we derived relation for M2, density ratio, velocity ratio, pressure ratio, temperature ratio and delta S, right? This is what in last few slides, this is what we are deriving. So anything interesting that you can see in this slide or this results? Any important observation you would like to make, anyone?
Sir, entropy depend from this Mach number and property of gas.
Yes. So let us say that property of gases are constant. Let us say gamma. I know what gas or what mixture of gases I have, so I know what is my gamma. And if I'm assuming perfect gas, let us say gas properties remain constant, gamma remains constant. You are going in the right direction. Now tell me what if all these equations gamma remains constant. So what is a very important observation from here? What is the RHS? What is the most important parameter?
Mach number.
Yes. So all this relation, for assuming that it is a perfect gas and gamma is given, gamma remains constant. Let us assume that. Then these are the functions that we are talking about. M2, we are talking about density ratio, velocity ratio. All these are simply function of M1. No other parameter is required. If you know M1, you can calculate these ratios. Okay. Now there is an important thing that you should know, that beyond, if you go to very high Mach numbers, let us say that below Mach 5. See, temperature also changes beyond the shock, right? There are large density changes, large changes with temperature. So once you go beyond Mach 5, the temperature changes are also quite high. Okay, and these are high enough to make this questionable. Here we have assumed that this is a perfect gas. That will not be true if you have very large temperatures. So these relations are quite okay when we are in supersonic region, but not in hypersonic. Hypersonic is more than Mach 5. So that you have to just keep in mind. Otherwise, for most of the numericals or examples that we'll discuss, this will hold true, unless specifically specifically mentioned in the question that it is like Mach 20 or 30. Other than that, general examples that we'll take, this will hold true. Okay, but you should be aware of the limitation. This is the limitation. Okay, moving on. So now we have a relation for flow properties using M1. Now let us see what happens when you stretch M1, when you go to limits. Let us say M1 goes to 0 or infinity. What will happen with this? So we know that if it goes to infinity, that perfect gas assumption will not be valid. But still, out of curiosity or just to look at the behavior, how these functions behave, we'll put this limit and see how what results we are getting from these equations. So these are the relations that we have shown in the last slide. Now let us substitute M1 is equal to infinity here. So if we use that limit, I will get M2 is equal to gamma minus 1 by 2 gamma. Okay, basically this is what will be remaining. Gamma minus 1. See, M1 is infinity, so this term will anyway, let us say this is 0, this is 0. So then you divide this will get cancelled. So I'm remaining gamma minus 1 by 2 divided by gamma. So this is what, and this is square of this, so under root. Now if you substitute 1.4 here, so this will be equal to 1.4 is gamma, then it will become square root, this quantity will become 0.378. Okay, this is for M2. Similarly, we can derive for density ratio. So again, this 2 will be negligible. M1, this 2 will get cancelled. I will be remaining with gamma plus 1, gamma minus 1. If I go for limit of M1 going to infinity, and that will be equal to 6. Similarly, for pressure ratio, we'll have infinity because M1 is only in the numerator, not in the denominator. So when this approaches infinity, this whole term will go to infinity. And similarly for the temperature ratio. So this is what is there in the, actually this will get cancelled, but one more term is there for M1. So that will drive this to infinity. So this is the general behavior what we have. Now let us look at M is equal to 1. Okay, for Sony conditions. So same relations, we just in this relation I'll put M1 is equal to, that's all. So it will become, basically this will get cancelled. It will become 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2 and gamma minus gamma minus 1 by 2. So that will be 1. Similarly, all these ratios, if you see, these ratios will become 1 for M1 is equal to 1. Okay, so that is called, basically that will be classified as What is that? Mach wave. Okay, we will talk about that in a little more detail. Now let us look at what are the various possibilities for a shock front. Okay, so let us say we have in a constant area duct, we have a shock here. M1 is the approaching Mach number and M2 is after the shock, behind the shock. Now what are the various possible scenarios? So one scenario, what we are mostly discussing so far is compression shock, or this is the normal shock that we are talking about. So for this we say that approaching Mach number is more than 1. Okay, this is more than 1 and this is less than 1. Okay, we have from the Prandtl relation we know that M1 and M2 are inversely proportional. So if it is more than 1, this has to be less than 1, right? This is the normal scenario what we are talking about. Another possibility could be Mach wave, what we just discussed in the last slide. So if M1 is equal to 1 and M2 is equal to 1 and all this, there's no finite change across the shock wave. Okay, so this is be any let us say pressure or velocity change that will be infinitesimal. There could not be any finite or large change across a Mach wave. Like for example, what happens in a shock, that will not happen for this. Now there is another interesting possibility that could occur, that is known as rarefaction shock. Okay, now for that to happen, what we will see is that M1 is subsonic. So the approaching flow is subsonic, but beyond that it becomes supersonic. So this is actually, logically speaking, the reverse condition of this. Here we have a supersonic flow approaching that passes this shock and becomes subsonic. Here the reverse condition is there. Okay. Are you people getting what I am talking about? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just by looking at this, can you tell me which one looks possible, which one looks not possible, not feasible? Just a guess. Then I will explain, giving logic why, which one is possible and which one is not possible. But while just looking at this table, which one, which condition looks improbable or not feasible to you?
So case 3.
Yes, but case 3 is a possibility. If you look at whatever equations that we have developed, case 3 is possible. If you just look at the mathematics, we can say that case 3 could be there, but physically we don't find case 3. Why is that so? That we'll explain in this slide. So if I want to see whether a process is physically possible or not, what is the parameter that I should worry about observe? Let me give you a hint. So let us say that whatever happens, that has to follow second law, right? First law of thermodynamics, second law of thermodynamics. So if I want to decide the possibility or feasibility of a process using second law, then which parameter I will use?
Entropy.
Correct. So we have a relation for entropy, right? We know that delta S can be found using these two relations. This term basically. So what I can do is I will substitute here. So one example is very easy that I can show you. So let us say M1 is equal to 1. So what will happen? M1 is equal to 1. This term will go. This will become 1. Right? Okay. Now we don't not to worry for that. M1 is 1 means this is what? This is 0. So this whole term will become log of 1. Right? Second term, what about the second term? We have this term. This will become 0. 1 plus is there. 1 plus this is there. So it will again become log of 1. So what will be the delta S for this condition? What is the delta S? Log 1 minus log 1.
0.
What it will be? Correct. So it will be 0. So will it be possible or not possible? So this will be a limiting case. This will be an ideal limiting case where entropy is constant, or we can say that this is a reversible case. Okay. So if you do calculation, basically if you check for M1 more than 1 or less than 1, what you can see is for M1 more than 1, we'll get delta S positive. Okay, entropy is, it is actually a highly irreversible process. So entropy will be very high and this compression shock. So this is because it follows second law, this is possible. Delta S is 0, this is a limiting case, but still we have no problem with the second law, this is possible. Now if you substitute M1 is less than 1 in this equation, what you are going to get is delta S is less than 0. So this is basically not, although mathematically from previous relations what we have derived, this could be a possibility. But physically it will never happen because it violates the second law. So rarefaction shock is a very interesting concept mathematically, but physically it will not happen. And basically what you can do is, if you take this equation, gamma can be assumed to be constant, let us say 1.4 for a air. So we are just left with R will be also constant. So we are left with Mach number only. Okay, let me delete it. Delete all that. So this is a little bit, it looks like a complicated equation, but to make the matter simple, you can just take gamma to be constant, and basically we are talking about delta S to be a function of Mach number. So graphically you can show it to be like this. So the x-axis shows you the Mach number and this y-axis shows you delta S by R. We can take the R in LHS. So as you can see, delta S is positive for Mach number more than 1. So shock is possible. This line is for Mach number 1. So beyond this, shock is possible. Exactly at that M is equal to 1. That wave still possible, a limiting case of reversible flow. Okay. Now this is the conditions where shock is not possible, and this is for your rarefaction shock. It will basically, as we discussed, so delta S becomes negative, then done. This is volatility second law, this will not happen. That's what this thought, that how this basically this function varies. That's all. Okay, so this was about possibility. Now let us look at another interesting thing. So we have last chapter we have studied about Fano flow and Fano line and Rayleigh line. So can anyone tell me what is Fano line about? If you remember it,
Friction.
Fano flow is friction. So we consider, see, friction is something that is allowed, but the basic idea for a Fano line is that it involves no heat transfer. So if my line is lying on this Fano curve, I will say that it is not having any heat transfer. Okay, friction is basically allowed, but it is not compulsory. So factor F, I can also say that factor F is 0. Okay, no friction case can also be drawn on a Fano line. Similarly, for a Rayleigh line says that friction will not be there. And heat transfer is allowed, but zero heat transfer is also a case that will fall on this line, right? You can be 0 also, right? So basically when we derived, we talked about for a Fano flow, mass flow rate will be constant, okay, and enthalpy will be constant. So this enthalpy actually refers to there is no heat transfer. Okay. Similarly, for a Rayleigh flow, mass flow rate will anyway be constant for both of them. For Rayleigh flow, we say that momentum is constant. Okay, momentum can be affected using friction. So for Rayleigh flow, we say that there is no friction, and here we say that there is no heat transfer. Now, what about a shock? For a shock, do we consider any heat transfer or friction? Yes or no? Shock we don't talk about. We say that it is a frictionless flow and no heat transfer is assumed to involved. So a shock will be on both the Fano line and Rayleigh line. Okay. Now if you, for a constant mass flow rate, enthalpy and momentum, if you draw these two lines, okay, this is how it will look, Fano line and the ley line. Now your this condition A and B are sonic conditions. Above B, what is this? This is this branch is sonic or sorry, subsonic or supersonic? This branch above B, what is that?
Subsonic.
Subsonic. What about Fano line? Above A, this part is sonic or subsonic? Subsonic. And below this, so this is your maximum entropy point. So below this we have supersonic and supersonic. So if you start at point X, X is let us say 1 for what we are talking. So we have a flow condition that is supersonic, and this is the how we represent shock. So shock goes from point 1 to point 2 and it becomes subsonic. Okay, so we'll stop at this slide. We are running out of time. So, any questions so far what we have discussed? Let me stop recording first.